So the breed MC, let's break it down. What exactly and who exactly they were. And then your father was a prominent figure during the heyday of the breed in the 1970s, 80s, and whatnot. Breed MC established in Asbury Park, New Jersey in 1965. The club was disbanded in 2006. It was basically fighting a war on three fronts, right? It was the Hells Angels, the Pagans, and law enforcement.
That's how it was in the early
Yeah,
70s too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it looked like the 2006 when they really came down. I think they arrested 19 guys. It really just dismembered the whole group because by that point there were really it was only a handful of guys left, maybe 40 or 50 guys, and they were heavy into uh methamphetamine, racketeering, extortion, so on and so forth. At their peak, they were in New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, but their stronghold was always Pennsylvania and New Jersey.
Hmm.
And oddly enough, they had a chapter in Staten Island in New York.
Yes, it did. Very strong.
But I'm sorry.
Very strong.
Yeah, yeah. And in the 1970s, uh, they were fighting both the Pagans and the Hells Angels, and it led to a lot of deaths. I think there's a story about the Hells Angels grenading one of their clubhouses, hand grenading
Yes.
one of their clubhouses. There's plenty
The
of
Long Island Clubhouse. Yeah.
yes, yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
So why don't we get into it? Tell me what you know about the club, and then we could talk about your dad and all the happenings that happen around it, and the major players, and so on and so forth.
So you're 100% correct on the history. That's how I understand it as well. The bombing you mentioned, or the bombs through the window or under the vehicles, was Long Island chapter was my father's chapter.
Okay.
So he was in Staten Island, as you know, you're from up that way. That's
Yeah.
very close.
Right. Yeah.
But my father's life was pretty wild and pretty crazy. He got full colors in 69, left in 72-ish, um, as the judge told him to.
Oh,
But
I see.
you mentioned it exactly correct. It was Pagans, Hells Angels, and my father's story is insane. Just being almost not even 3 years. I mean, the Cleveland brawl against Hells Angels and the breed is the most notorious story that happened in Cleveland, Ohio,
Yeah.
1971. 56 guys get accused of or get basically first-degree murder charges.
Mhm.
Uh, and my father's adage to me was, nobody talked and everybody walked. But so that event in itself would have been a career for most outlaw bikers.
Right.
But then, you know, 7 months later, he gets kidnapped by the Pagans.
Your dad does.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
let's before we move ahead, tell us more about the incident in Ohio. Let's kind of get into detail about that.
So the breed chapter in Ohio was an up and coming chapter, and the Hells Angels were the powerhouse in Ohio. Hells Angels Ohio was probably their strongest chapter.
Mhm.
Everybody thinks of Los Angeles and Oakland and California. Ohio was where the dogs were.
Right.
Um, and they were a force, and those guys were the baddest of the bad. So
Right.
when the breed chapter was up and coming there, they were getting flack from the Angels, and the bike show at the Polish Women's Hall in 1971 March um, was kind of the event that they knew the Angels would be there because they had semi-sponsored the event. They were going to have
Mhm.
show bikes there, and you know they were going to show up. The breed was still up and coming, even though they had started several years prior, but they were still, who are you?
Right.
So the breed showed up in force, and the story is, it was 30 Hells Angels against 150 breed members, and the narrative the Hells Angels preach is, well, 30 guys, 30 of us beat up 150 of them, with the death head count in their
Right.
favor. But most people don't realize that the fight lasted like a minute or two.
As they all do.
there was police there,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's not like it was a Royal Rumble where they all just got to beat heads until the last guy was standing,
Right.
and I'm sure half the guys when the fight started jetted, but my father did not,
Right. Right. Right.
so he had he had a scar on his arm or his wrist that was probably 6 or 7 inches long, and he
Okay.
had that for life, and again, this is before my time.
Right.
So, but I'm sure that scar was a constant reminder of, the life he lived and,
Hmm.
what he did. And
Right.
so it's just crazy,
All right.
honestly.
What was your dad's name? Obviously, it was Card, but what was his first name?
George.
Okay, George Card. Okay. Here's when from the little bit I know about motorcycle clubs. Like for example, let's take the Pagans for example, right?
Right.
Um, they want to move into different territory. Most clubs will form alliances knowing that um there's another major player. So, like for examples, when the Pagans went through this, what we refer to as the Blue Wave, when they want to expand in the early
Mhm.
into the mid 2000s, they made alliances with the Mongols, from what I understand, knowing that they were going to get flack from the Hells Angels and so on and so forth. So, they were able to have power on their side if anything should happen. But the breed said, "Fuck it, we're going."
Kind of, yeah. That's why I think that they caught flack in Ohio.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think so it's funny you mentioned that, and your segue this week is incredible. You were talking about the Pagans the other day, and now you're
yeah.
talking about the breed who, like I mentioned, kidnapped my father. But the Pagans and the breed, in his notes, my dad writes that, they were cool in the 70s and then early 71.
Hmm.
I think, and I'm just putting dots together.
Hmm.
The breed went into Maryland, which I don't
Yes.
know that everybody knows about this,
Hmm.
but it's in his notes.
Okay.
And I don't know if they asked the Pagans or didn't ask the Pagans. I don't know. I'm not a member. I don't know that shit, but I'm just connecting dots. So I think that that's when the Pagans as a whole said, okay, you're our new enemy.
Yeah,
You're
yeah, yeah, yeah. The Pagans have a stronghold on Maryland, and it kind of
oh
always
yeah,
has.
that's the mother house, mother.
Yeah. Now, let's get into again. I have to believe that is the case because nobody makes moves like that because they came hard. The Hagans and the Angels came hard on the breed.
Yeah,
Right? They did not make any alliances. It was all balls basically,
yeah.
right?